I've come across something very bizarre, and I'm not the only one. I first found out that there were two people named Israel Keyes, and of course there are other people with the name Israel Keyes, but I'm talking about two people who lived in Washington State at the same time who both killed someone and then both committed suicide. So this all started for me when I was going through the FBI files a while back and I found this complainant form. So-and-so called the Anchorage Division to report information that she knew an Israel Keyes. She graduated from North Kitsap High School in Bluesbow, Washington in 1987 and graduated with a male named Israel Keyes. She did a Google search of Israel Keyes on approximately April 4th, 2012, and read that another Israel Keyes, who is her same age and who she believes to be the one she graduated with, killed his girlfriend, her 12-year-old son, and himself in 2008 in Plains, Montana. She found this to be an odd coincidence, considering the events of what happened with the other Israel Keyes that is currently in custody in Alaska, and wanted to report it to the FBI. Yes, that's a weird coincidence. This weird, right? Of course, I'm wondering, are they related? They both have the same last name, same bizarre first name, and I set out to answer this question for myself. And I'm not the only one who has been wondering about this. This is very interesting. There is no gene for psychopathy, but studies have shown, and I'm not going to get into them now, please feel free to go read them for yourself. They are very interesting. But I've read some studies that show that psychopathy or traits of psychopathy do run in families. There are two men named Israel Keyes in Washington. What is this? This could be a fascinating study. First, I'm going to give some background on Israel William Keyes. I'm going to talk about his crimes. I actually interviewed someone who worked with him, so I'm going to play that interview for you, and then get to whether or not they're actually related, and to see if there were any more similarities between them. Israel William Keyes was born on January 27th, 1969. So right off the bat, another coincidence. They were both born in January, though Israel William Keyes was 9 years older than serial killer Israel Keyes. Israel William Keyes was from Washington State and lived in King County, Washington, which is about 5 hours away, a 5-hour drive from Culver, Washington, where Izzy Killer Keyes grew up. Both Israels were really into music, and Israel William actually played guitar. Here's Israel Keyes' 1986 yearbook photo from North Kitsap High School. Israel had one sister named Dusty, and apparently they were very, very close. I reached out to her and she did not respond, which that's not the first time I've experienced that. It's totally understandable. But she sicked a couple of her friends on me who started commenting on random posts on my Facebook. I'm not going to put that in this video because I believe that it will take away from it and it's not really relevant. But I will be putting it in a second video because it's quite ridiculous and kind of comical and entertaining, so you'll have that to look forward to. Israel William Keyes is kind of a handyman and becomes a welder, which is another interesting overlap considering the construction work and fixer-upper type personality that Israel serial killer Keyes was. Israel William Keyes eventually moved to Plains, Montana, where he worked as a welder at RTI Fabrication Incorporated, which is this building here. Do you remember who he is?
Oh yeah. I can't give you any history. I didn't know him other than the time that he worked here. My opinion of him, he kind of kept to himself. I know comments were made that he felt he was a little bit elevated above the rest of the crew. Thought he was more specialized or something, and I can't say if he was or wasn't, but he didn't fit in real well. I think that he was here, and then it seemed like he left for a while and then ended up coming back. And that is very coincidental, those similar stories, with the same name, and the name is unusual. He started here in 2007.
2007?
Yeah.
As a welder, correct?
Yes, and he worked here, but at one of those points when he left, when he came back, his girlfriend, Alexis, was with him. So I don't know if she was somebody he knew from school. Her name was Alexia Laszlo, and that is who he killed along with her son, and then killed himself. She also worked here. She came here with him, and she had worked in the shipyards, I believe, on the coast there, and she worked in our shop.
What did she do exactly?
I believe she was a welder, laborer.
Okay. Do you recall what she was like at all?
I can give you my impression of her, which is just my thoughts. I think that she maybe had kind of a hard life. I think she was a hard worker. And my impression of them out there is Israel kept his thumb on her.
I was curious about that, reading the story, that he didn't want her to go to the funeral of her ex-husband or ex-boyfriend's father. It seems that he, just from what I read, I can't infer, how he felt or his details of his mental state, but it seemed that he had a serious problem with her going to this funeral.
I'm sure this is my thoughts again, I'm sure he was threatened by her going anywhere. Because I think he was very controlling. There was a connection there of a previous boyfriend or something that maybe made it even more threatening, but yeah. Mm-hmm. And were they related, do you know?
That's what I'm trying to find out. I've looked back into their family history and have had a bit of a difficult time finding
some information.
But it's such a bizarre name.
Yes, yeah. So it just seems quite likely they are, but I don't know.
Here is an old article entitled 3 Dead in Plains Double Murder Suicide. Police found 3 dead Saturday after a reported double murder suicide just west of Wild Horse Plains Golf Course in Plains. According to Sanders County Sheriff Gene Arnold, Israel Keys, 39, shot and killed his girlfriend, Alexia Laszlo, 37, and her son, Michael Tassikos, 12, with a reported 9 rounds from a Glock 40 caliber pistol. Arnold said that at 2:29 a.m., James Keys, Israel's father, who lives around the corner, called police to report that he had heard gunfire coming from his son's home. James reported that his son called him and said he had shot his girlfriend, her son, and that he was going to shoot himself too. According to the police log, James was the first person on the scene and said that he found the bodies of Laszlo and Tassikos surrounded by blood. Arnold, 5 Sanders County deputies, and 1 Plains police officer, Frank Seeley, met him there, finding all 3 bodies in the house. Arnold said that James told police that the incident had started over a domestic dispute involving Laszlo wanting to go to the funeral of her father-in-law in Washington. Arnold said, Israel told his dad in a phone call that he wasn't happy with his girlfriend going to the funeral. So far, Arnold says that drugs don't appear to be involved and weren't found on the scene. Arnold expressed his condolences for the family and friends of the victims and also for the community in general. When you find a kid involved like this, it's a lot harder because it's emotionally stressful, Arnold said, referring to Tassikos. We do our job, but when you stop and look at it, it's just very, very traumatic. And when you're in a smaller community, it's just that much rougher. Both Keys and Laszlo worked for RTI Fabrication Inc. as fitters and welders. Tom Mowry, the shop foreman at RTI, said Keys liked to keep to himself but didn't seem unusual in any way. When they were both working here, Keys and Laszlo, everything seemed fine. He was a pretty straightforward guy, kind of a loner, but he did good work, Mowry said. He was the type of guy that didn't want to be bothered, but didn't bother anyone else either. Arnold said Keys had no prior criminal record in Sanders County. This is Alexia Laszlo's obituary from the Kitsap Sun. Alexia Stephanie Laszlo was born February 2nd, 1971 in Jackson, Mississippi. She attended various schools during her father's tour in the Marine Corps. In June of 1984, the family relocated to Indianola, Washington. Alexia loved the outdoors. She played softball during her grade school years. Alexia was always one of the first to reply and react to any family emergency. She was extremely devoted to her sons. The entire family will miss her smile and her love for all. The memorial was held August 16th at 2 p.m. at the Redeemer United Methodist Church in Kingston, Washington. Here is the obituary for Michael Tassakos, 12 years old. He was born March 2nd, 1996 in Bremerton, Washington, attended Chimacum Elementary School, enjoyed the outdoors, which included motorbiking, baseball, and track. Michael excelled at shot put, taking 3rd place in 6th grade at Plains Junior High in 2008. He had other favorite hobbies like fishing, video games, and going out to the movies with friends. So I looked this up, and the first thing I find is a short little article entitled "A Bizarre and Tragic Coincidence. There are 2 Israel Keyses" by Josh Farley. This is a very short article and covers stuff that I'm going to cover later in the video, so I'm not going to read it, but I'll link it below for the sake of listing my sources. The next thing I find is a post made by Sleuthing Some on the True Crime Bullshit Reddit. The post is called "The Other Israel Keys, Israel W Keys." I'm pretty certain I've shared this either here or on the TCB Facebook group, but I recently wrote about it under a subreddit asking for bizarre cases / coincidences, and most had no idea about the other Israel Keys. Both Israels lived in the same town of Covell, Washington at one time. They both lived in Constable, New York. They were both in the army during the same year at one point, both killed other people, and both committed suicide. Adding up all those completely random coincidences is just so bizarre. I agree. Israel W. Keys also lived in Plains, Montana. He shot his girlfriend and her young son. Yes, gone through that. Just thought I'd share about it here in case I never did before. Any thoughts? And then they added, if your last name is Keys, I'd suggest not naming the kid Israel. So there are some people on the thread talking about this, and there are some interesting points. Is there any chance that some of this is a record mix-up based on having the same name, like Israel Williams is listed as having lived in Constable, New York, because someone at the records department got the 2 mixed up? Sleuthing Some commented, I don't think so, because his obituary actually mentioned him living in those 2 towns. His family would have been the ones to write the obituary. He was from Port Angeles, Washington, which is only about an hour from Nia Bay. Another weird coincidence. He lived in Palousebo and Covell in Washington State, along with Plains, Montana, and Constable, New York. The addresses that were listed were not the same as our Israel Keys in Covell and Constable. That's another reason I believe he genuinely lives in both places. He didn't live there during the same years as our Israel Keys. I have no idea why I keep saying our, because we didn't own him, lol. That's a great point. I believe Constable is an extremely small town, and the odds of them both living there are probably slim. So I'm reading all this, and it just keeps getting weirder and weirder. I knew about the same names and the double homicide / suicide case, but not that they lived in 2 of the same towns. Covell has a population of about 4,700, and Constable has about 1,500. Statistically, that has to be close to impossible, as in probably a better chance of getting hit by lightning while a shark bites you. That sounds about right. Then Sleuthing Some, hi, how are ya, says, exactly. I discovered this when I had a job a few years back, bail bond agent in Washington State. How convenient. That required me to run thorough background checks, and I had access to court documents. I had just begun learning about the serial killer Israel Keys and wanted to read his police report from his DUI in my county. I searched his name and became thoroughly confused because it pulled up Israel William Keys. But since he had previous addresses in Constable, Covell, and Palousebo, Washington, plus served in the army and committed suicide, I assumed it had to be our Israel Keys. But the birth dates and the age didn't add up. Israel William Keys was, I believe, 39 when he committed suicide, plus it was 2008. So I read the police report and realized, hell, this is a completely different Israel Keys, but with way too many similarities. I was sure it was some kind of blip in the system until I found Israel William Keys' father's address and read his father's detailed account of his son's murder-suicide. The odds are just beyond insane. I still don't know what to think about it because it seems too uncanny. Bro, that's weird. That's wild, I had no idea. Right? I'm really not into conspiracy theories, but this is so bizarre, it almost seems like a CIA psych op. Dear Sleuthing Some, aside from what you have posted about your work, I have not been able to find any information about Israel William Keyes in the military or that he lived in New York. In fact, I can't even find his obituary on the Internet Archives. You were able to find it way back when, and now it's 2022. So if anyone out there wants to piggyback off of this or take it running, please feel free to email me and we can kind of figure this out. I also messaged some members of Israel serial killer Keyes' family. One of them got back to me and was incredibly gracious. I hope this message finds you well. My name is Victoria Evans. I'm doing independent research and I have a question for you, if you'll permit me. Out of curiosity, are you related to the other Israel Keyes, also from Washington? Israel William Keyes, born January 27th, 1969 to August 9th, 2008? There are quite a number of similarities between him and your late brother. It's a peculiar coincidence. Anyways, thank you for your time. Cheers, Victoria. He said, not that I'm aware of. I don't think these two Israel Keyes are actually related. This is a map that I made of areas that they lived in for comparison. I'm sure I missed some things. So here is a family tree of both families. This is what I was able to put together. My interest doesn't even necessarily have to do with Israel Keyes particularly. It could be any person with his behavioral characteristics, personality traits, psychopathy, and homicidal ideation and homicidal behavior, who has a relative who's doing the exact same thing. It's just fascinating to me because it's so rare, and I don't think of all the serial killers that I've read about. I don't know that I've ever read about one wherein the same place that they live, that there is a person with the exact same name who lived there at the same time with that many similarities between the two. I just found that to be fascinating. So for those of you out there who were curious about this, I hope this answered some of your questions, filled in some blanks. It's hard to say. I couldn't find a clear connection. I thought you guys would think that was interesting too. All right, that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Victoria Evans. Be safe out there.